All right. Welcome, Steve, to the Self-Employment Success Podcast. Excited to have you here today.
Thanks, man.
Of course, excited for this. Tell us a little bit, let's just dive right in. Tell us about your business or yourself. Tell us about yourself and your business and kind of where it stands today.
Yeah, so what I do today, my primary job is Coltivar. So I've spent the last decade or more turning around and growing companies. So at Coltivar, that's what I do. I go into organizations and I help them to put in place a good strategy, but then also tie in the financial side of their business to help them drive value. So that's what I do primarily. And I say that primarily because we'll get into this, I'm sure, throughout the episode. A couple of years ago, I started a side project called Boosting Your Financial IQ, which has turned into something bigger than I ever thought would happen. And so I have these two parallel tracks going on.
And you're also a dad of a husband and a father of two. So you're not living a slow life. Two
Yeah.
two full-time entrepreneurial jobs and a family does not lead to twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have Cultivar, which is that like more a consulting service or a subscription service where you go in and kind of evaluate someone's business and say both from like a structure and a financial standpoint, here's how we can increase the valuation of your business to sell? Is that kind of what that is?
Yeah. It's a consulting practice where I'm going into organizations and helping them exactly with what you said.
That's awesome. And then on the other side, you kind of started this side thing, boost your financial IQ, and tell the listeners about that because that's also really cool and really interesting and practical to the general public.
Yeah. So while running Cultivar, I mean, I've been doing Cultivar for over a decade, like I said. During this time period, when I go into organizations and I help turn them around or help them to grow, the biggest thing that I realized, like the biggest obstacle of these organizations is their financial acumen. Because if you're running a business unit, you're running a business, whatever it may be, if you don't understand the story behind the numbers, it's really hard to pursue a strategy or to drive better performance because you're not going to know where to focus your attention because you're going to be all over the
Mm,
place. I mean, let's face it, running a business takes a lot of work and it's a lot of grind, and you could be you could be all over the place because you're pulled from an operational standpoint or a legal standpoint or marketing or sales. There's so many functions, and then you have the customer
mm,
that you have to pay attention to. So during this time frame, here I am working with companies, turning them around, and I would sit with the leadership team or the management, and we would look at the report card, which is the financial statement, and oftentimes I would see blank stares. Like they'd look at it,
mm,
and to them, it probably looked like a sheet of music to me, right? I'm not musically inclined. I can't read music. So if I saw a bunch of notes on a piece of paper, like I can't hear the song. And so the
mm,
same thing is true with them. They're looking at these quote sheets of paper, financial statements. They can't hear the song. They can't understand the story. Sure, they could see that revenue is this, costs are this, profits that. But if I said to them, okay, we have a gross profit problem. Gross profit is dropping, month over month by 10%. Go fix it. They'd look at me with blank stares. So with this, I decided to put on a course called Boosting Your Financial IQ. And I
mm.
just reached out to my clients and I filled a whole hotel. Like I rented out a hotel conference room and had all these clients come themselves as entrepreneurs and business owners, but they also sent their non-financial managers to come get educated. And that was kind of the
Mhm.
genesis of Boosting Your Financial IQ. There's more of it, how it exploded into a podcast, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. We talk about a lot on this podcast the fact that there's kind of two entrepreneurs. There's the one that likes business, likes the sheets of paper, the taxes, and doesn't really care what the business itself does.
Mhm.
I feel like those are fewer and further between than the regular entrepreneur who's like, I have a passion, a skill, a service, or a product that I love doing, and now I'm doing it as a business, and I don't understand paying my taxes. I don't understand profit. I don't understand any of that stuff. I think that I've never heard the music sheet analogy, but it makes so much sense. of like some people can read the sheet and hear in their head, I know exactly what this should sound like. And some people can even then just like play from ear, like kind of as it goes. Same thing with your finances. If you don't understand it, you're going to be looking at this and be like, this means nothing to me. It's just
Exactly.
scary and daunting. And so I think it's really cool how boosting your financial IQ kind of spurred out of Cultivar because it's right. You're right. You're sitting with entrepreneurs trying to help them build their business valuation to say, hey, you want to sell this or you want to get the peak performance out of this. Here's how this works. But if you're speaking Greek to them, that's not helpful at all. like,
Sure.
like you're saying words and I'm not hearing anything that matters. So then to put on this course that I do think you probably didn't stumble into it because you were solving a need to begin with, but it's almost like you stumbled into how needed it was. Hey, I'm
Exactly.
going to put this on. Whoa, this whole hotel conference center is filled up because
Yeah,
so many
exactly.
people are are scared of what they don't know or overwhelmed by it. They know it's important and they feel like if they do it wrong, they're going to be destitute or some like scary man in a black suit's going to come knock on their door and like take them to jail. You're like, I don't
Yeah,
know why that's your
exactly.
fear, but it's cool that you kind of started solving that problem. So back up. I don't believe you just like woke up, in college one day and said, I'm going to go help people boost their financial IQ and help them sell their businesses. And I'm going to do it entrepreneurially. How did you get here? Tell us the story that kind of led to these two things and where you are
Yeah, I
today.
mean, yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And, it's a messy story. It's not this linear story. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Sometimes I'm a little envious of other people that, went to high school, they did great, they got into college, they got their degree, they went and worked for another company, they worked their way up, now they're working on Wall Street or whatever it is. And, my story is much messier. So when I was in high school, I was working at Dairy Queen, 4.25 an
Mm,
hour. Okay, that's nothing, right? Think about that. If I worked 40 hours a week, that's $160. Take out taxes is like nothing. And so this is my summer job. And then one day my friend came in and said, "Look, you should come install sprinklers with us." And I was like, "What the heck are sprinklers? I don't even know what that is." And he's like, "It's underground sprinklers. We do some landscaping. You get $10 an hour. Get to take your shirt off and work outside." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm in. That sounds like a great job." So I did that for a couple of years, and then I went back my junior year of high school to this company, and they're gone. Like the yard was empty of all equipment, their office was shut
mm,
off, the lights were off, they just disappeared. And I was like, what the heck am I going to do? So I started handing out business cards because, like, I know how to fix sprinkler systems. I'll go in and help people like repair their sprinkler systems, do some landscaping things on the side, and I'll charge them $50 an hour, and then I'll mark up my parts. So I started doing this and I realized, okay, I would much rather do like 5 or 10 or 20 jobs a week, these little service calls, than go work at some place for $10 an hour. I mean, I can make, you know, 5 times that in 1 hour. So I
mm,
started doing that. And then it expanded from service work into like landscaping projects. Hey, build a patio, put in some sod, plant these trees. To, these great big architectural projects where we're building massive water features and outdoor kitchens and pergolas and patios and lighting and the whole gamut. I mean, people are spending, a quarter of a million, half a million, $1 million on their landscaping,
man.
and it turned into a great job. So when I was in college, is my junior year, something with the junior year here thing, but it's my junior year of college. I'm sitting in class. I have like 2 weeks left of the semester. My phone's ringing off the hook. And this is back in the day when cell phones first came out, like the big old block cell phone. And I'm like, okay, these customers are calling me. My business is taking off. I'm not going to let school interfere with my education. So I left.
mm,
Like I walked out of class, Leland. I like walked out, packed up my truck, left. And that's when I decided to pursue my business full time. Fast forward, I did that for 13 years. And here's the sad thing, and this is the tie in back to boosting your financial IQ. During that time, like, sure, we were building award winning projects. We were doing great. I grew up from my sister's garage to a multi-million dollar business. We had architects, designers, we had, foremen, management, we had the whole gamut, right? A great team. During that time, I'm leading the organization, and you know, to admit, I mean, sorry to admit, but I could not read a financial statement.
Mm,
My accountant would give me the income statement. I'd look at it and be like, okay, revenue, okay, that's how much we're selling. I get that. Here are my costs. Okay, I can understand the line items. And here's profit, but I didn't know what to do with it.
mm-hmm,
And then I'd get the balance sheet and I'd be like, okay, I see cash. That kind of makes sense. Getting down to accounts receivable, like, I don't know what the heck this is. So I was just running my business off sheer heroics and grit.
mm,
And guess what? I failed.
mm,
So that was like the traumatic piece for me. And if you've never done this before, or your listeners, if you've never done this before, try standing in front of a room full of employees that have like this, that revere you as their leader, and they have all this respect for you. Stand in front of them, look them in the eyes, and tell them, I have to let you go because I was pursuing a bad strategy and I didn't take the time to increase my financial literacy to keep this business thriving and resilient. It's terrible,
mm.
terrible time in my life.
Gosh, I can't imagine. First of all, thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of people lean on their accolades and lean on and like put their successes forward. They don't lead from their weaknesses of like, this is where I went wrong. This is was the most painful part of my career. And so I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. And it just is like the truth of your story. And it's clearly what led you down the line of building your financial acumen. Something that two things you said that I thought was really interesting was I didn't let school get in the way of my education. And when I was in college, one of my college roommates very similarly had this like home painting business that was getting bigger and bigger, and he was winning all these like awards. Um and as terrible as it is, all of us were like, you're so silly for doing this like manual labor job in the heat of summer. Like, we're all college students having fun. And he ended up similarly junior year dropping out to go pursue entrepreneurship. And we thought like, you're in a business major, and he kept saying like, I'm learning more on the job than I am in my major. Like, I feel like I know the same amount as my professors, or I'm learning more. And I just took that for pride. I was like, this guy's prideful, you know, poo poo on him.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward, he's like, you know, Fortune magazine's like top 30 under 30, Forbes, like he's really built a lot, and he's so smart and sharp and capable, and has built this empire of for people who want to self-publish their books. And it's, multiple business lines. And it for me was the piece, like I loved having my education and going to college. I don't use any of it because it's not even a
Yep.
degree that's related to my job. But it was the first time that I realized like you don't need a 4-year degree to be an entrepreneur. You don't need to take out all the student loans. You don't need to take the time and effort in order to be really smart. Like that university doesn't lead to necessarily like education. And so I think that's really profound of like, I didn't want school itself to get in the way of my education. Um, and then in so many ways, like part of the entrepreneurial journey is learning from the school of hard knocks, and is like
Yeah.
learning from like this went south. So you're at this point where you had to close your landscaping business. You had to painfully look everyone in the eyes and let them know that you have to let them go. What's next? Like you wake up the next morning, what happens?
Yeah. I mean, that was my whole life. I mean, seriously, my friends would be out having a good time on a Friday night, and I was back at home building, like a proposal for my client, or working on the next brochure, for the next conference I was going to be at. And so the business was like my life. That's all I did.
Mm,
Now all of a sudden, I'm like, what do I do next? So I explored different opportunities. I met with a lot of people, a lot of my mentors. And during that time, I had other companies who were my competitors or people I worked with in the construction space, because I was in the construction industry overall. And they would reach out to me and say, "Hey, Steve, why don't you come in and like run this business or run this division or like help our business out too?" And I'm like, "I'm not going to go work for you. Like, I'm not a good W-2 employee." So I said, "Instead, let me come into your business and I'll, share with you some best practices and, teach you the things that I did to make my business successful." And so that's what I did. And it started this consulting path, which I had no plans for. It's not like I was like, okay, I'm going to do landscaping and I'm going to be a consultant. There's no plans whatsoever. So I started doing this and I was consulting. At the same time, I did go back to school and I was finishing my undergraduate degree in accounting and finance. So I did that. I finished my degrees. I went on to get my master's degree in accounting. And during that program and getting my CPA, I got job offers from the big four accounting firms. So I ended up going to work for Ernst & Young.
Mm.
So I'm at Ernst & Young. I'm working, my tail off because, public accounting requires a
Yeah.
lot of hours. And so I'm working my tail off. And then I would go back to my hotel room, when we were traveling after working a full day, 12 to 14-hour day. And I'd put in another 3-4 hours helping some of these clients, right, that were still
Mm.
tagging along from my consulting days. And then I soon realized that I'm making more money doing this like part-time side work than I am working full-time at Ernst & Young. I'm like, what the heck am I doing?
Mm.
So I left Ernst & Young and I started my own practice, Coltivar. And so that's the genesis of Coltivar. But here's the thing, Leland, that this is like the whole like framework or foundation upon which Coltivar is built. When I was at Ernst & Young, I'm working on multiple clients across multiple industries, but my main client was in the financial services space. They're a
Mm.
multi-billion dollar multinational business. All right. They were bought out by KKR in a leveraged buyout, and they were sitting on a ton of debt as a result
Mm.
of the buyout. And their industry was also changing. They're in financial services and merchant services. And during that time, there's a lot of shakeup going on, a lot of disruption. So I would see the leadership team put in place strategies, right, to help the business grow and to move into the next frontier. So I'd see these strategies and, sure, maybe there's more detailed plans behind the scenes that I didn't see, but on the surface, it was like mission, vision, values, our values
Mm.
are integrity and hard work and, customer service. And we're going to do it by pursuing these 3 pillars or whatever it was, right? Then I was working with the finance team and I look at these intricate budgets and the budgets they would start in, August. It would take them all of the end of the year into Q3, Q4 to finish the budget. They would get the rubber stamp from management and then they would pursue that budget as like some type of strategy or plan. And then I'd look at their reporting and it was like pages of reports or like Excel files that went from column A to column like AZ of just all this
Mm.
data. And I remember sitting down with the manager and asking him, and I said, what do you look at to measure success?
Mm.
Like, what are you looking at to measure success? And how do you know if your company's strategy is working? Number one, he didn't know what the strategy was, but he's just like, I don't know. I would just look at these numbers and measure variances. And I was like, light bulb moment. There's a massive disconnect between strategy and finance. You
Mm.
can't have a strategy for the business. Like, hey, this is where we're going to compete, how we're going to compete, how we're going to win. This is our go-to-market strategy. These are the initiatives we're going to pursue. And then not have the financial side, the economic side to pair with it. And that's when
Mm.
I realized there's a major gap. And if it was true with this company that was sophisticated and successful, there are a ton of companies, especially on Main Street, that could use my help. And that's why
Mm.
I left and I launched Coltivar.
Gosh, there's so much there to what you're saying. I mean, one, it sticks out and I'm impressed at like you've got like the genetic code of entrepreneurship. Like it takes a special person to show up to your old job, realize like the sprinkler company's closed and just be like, well, then I'll just do it. Like
Right.
whether someone there is there to help like usher that for me or not. I'm just going to go do it. Takes like a unique person. Same thing with like my company just failed. I'm now being recruited by these other companies with what are probably awesome jobs. And you're like, I'll just consult for you. Or like, I don't want to work for you. Like I think there's so much to that, and just seeing needs and filling it, I think is something really unique to an entrepreneur that not all people have. And that's okay. Like not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. The other thing is this like mission, vision, value, core pillars, like side of things versus the finances. I see that all the time. And I think it's healthy to have a clear mission and vision. So you're not doing everything for all people. You like have a direction to go. I think there's a lot of helpful there to like stuff there, but you're right. It feels much better to be like, I'm going to get really clear on my mission and my vision and my pillars and all these things that I can then also put into marketing. And that's like fun stuff. But that's not your finances. You need to have a strategy there. Like you need to have that clear, because otherwise there's no engine behind the car that's driving your vision.
Exactly.
Right? Like you
Yeah,
could
I mean,
have this great vision and it's just going to fall, like the car is going to break down because you don't have the engine intact. And your finances as a business owner, as much as most business owners don't want to like get into the nitty gritty and it's overwhelming for them, so much of that is your engine and like your true like pinnacle of health for your business. If your finances aren't healthy, your business is not healthy, and therefore you're not freed up to engage the mission, vision, and values that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was a CFO of a large construction and renewable energy company, I mean, we saw our revenue drop significantly when tariffs hit solar panels. I mean, that's the space that we were in. We're building the massive solar farms out in the desert.
Mm.
And so tariffs hit, and developers are like, I don't know what tariffs look like. I don't know how this impacts the project costs. So development stopped. And so we had to pivot and we had to expand out into Australia. Well, this is case in point when you can have a strategy and say, okay, we're going to expand out in Australia. Australia, they want to get off coal. They want to do more renewable energy. So there's going to be this demand for these solar farms. Okay, great. That's there. What's our go-to-market strategy? How are we going to position ourselves? Who is our ideal customer? You can have all that in place and say, green light, let's go to Australia. But then behind the scenes, Leland, as you alluded to, it's like, okay, how much cash are you going to need to start up this venture? I mean, you're going to have to find an office. You're going to have to source employees. You're going to have all these startup costs. And then what are your margins going to look like? What does your pricing strategy look like in Australia compared to the US? Can you get the same margins? And, what's your cost structure look like? What does the labor, pool look like? I mean, are you going to be paying more for labor? Are these jobs profitable? And if so, by how much? And then you put all that together with your cash and your investments. And then you have to ask yourself, does our return on invested capital exceed our cost of capital? In other words,
Mm.
does going out to Australia create a return on our money? And what kind of return? And is that worth the risk? Because if you do all the numbers, and you can't predict everything, I mean, there's so many variables, but if you
Mm-hmm.
run the numbers and you tie in the financial side, and you're like, look, best case scenario, we're going to earn a return of 8% by expanding into Australia. And you're like, okay, but our cost of capital is 12. Like, obviously you wouldn't do that. I mean, that'd be dumb because you'd be losing 4%, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing that I'm talking about with like strategy and finance. Like, it's not that complicated, but you can't have mission and vision and values and say, look, we're going to be the best and have integrity and hard work and customer service. And we're all about innovation. And here's our fancy website. And we're going to go serve these customers. And then you don't have a pricing strategy. You don't understand your cash needs, your cash flow, and you just go out there and you try to execute and you fail. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
happens over and over and over again.
Totally. So then you start Cultivar,
Mhm.
that's going well, but you're seeing this need over and over again. Like you've kind of gone through the school of hard knocks, which led you back to school, which then led you to the place where you're like, I now know how to help business owners with this financial strategy. I'm a CPA, I've got my master's in accounting, I understand it through and through, and now I'm helping other business owners. But when I'm sliding these papers across the desk, or I'm presenting on this and working with them, they're not going back to earlier hearing that song. They're not
Yep.
understanding it, because that's a critical void in most entrepreneurs' business acumen. So I'm going to put on Boosting Your Financial IQ originally as like a workshop that people can come to. And then that has just absolutely exploded. So walk us through, once BYFIQ started, kind of how that looked and how that's grown and progressed over time.
Yeah, great. No, that's great. So after the conference, I'm like, okay, there's something here. Created this nice workbook. I put on the program for some other companies. I'd go into companies and just teach their leadership team. And then it stopped. I took the CFO job. I moved out to Chattanooga, did that work. I came back to Colorado. I took this job as a CFO eventually, for a tech company. But in between those two CFO jobs, this is the interesting thing. And this is the weird thing about how life works out. I was thinking to myself, I should just record, a few episodes. Like I did some other podcasts in the past. They were moderately successful. And I was like, I know how to podcast. I know how to record episodes. So I'm going to do 10 episodes. I'm going to talk about the income statement, the balance sheet, statement of cash flows, some other topics. And I'm just going to put it out there. So then if anybody ever comes to me and says, Steve, can you help me with understanding financials? I can say, go listen to my podcast. Right. So that's the thought. So I do this and I record it and I just put it out there. I'm not marketing it. I'm not like promoting it on social media. I just put it out there. And I get the analytics every week. I get this email. And I think the first week I got like 2 downloads. And it's like my mom and my sister probably, they're so sweet. It's probably my mom and my sister. And then I do that. And then the next week it's like 5 and it's like 10 downloads, So time goes on. I take this second CFO job that I alluded to. I'm at this fintech company, we're raising a bunch of capital. We're doing all these acquisitions. And, in the meantime, I get these weekly emails. And it's like, it is stuck on 100 downloads a week for the longest time. It's like 99 to 105 to 98 to 106, it's just bouncing around. So then one week I get this email and it's like 350. And I'm like, oh, okay, is there like a glitch? Like what the heck happened,
Yeah. The algorithm
And
messed
then,
up here.
yeah, the algorithm messed up or something. And then the next week it was like 500. And then it was like 750. And I was like, what's going on here? And it continues to do this. So I leave the fintech company for other reasons, but I leave and I'm like, okay, maybe during this transitionary period, maybe I'll just record a few more episodes, have some guests on and see what happens. And then my numbers are like 1,000 a week, 2,000, 5,000. And I'm like, wow, this thing is like really growing. And I'd have people would reach out to me on, Instagram or LinkedIn, or they shoot me emails and like, I love your podcast. And this is from all over the world. And I'm like, okay, there's something here. So then I decided to create a platform and then take all the stuff that I was teaching organizations, all the things I've learned over the years, and put it into a course, into a program. And the nice thing is, and this is where a lot of entrepreneurs can go wrong, and maybe I struggle with this a little bit, but here's the deal. As entrepreneurs, you're creative, right? So there's a plethora of opportunities. It's never like I'm sitting here and I'm like, what am I going to do next? What are the opportunities? My problem is saying no to the plethora of opportunities. And so trying to run Boosting Your Financial IQ and Coltivar as 2 separate entities that don't connect. Like if I was running a surfboard shop and an attorney firm, right? Like it'd be like 2 totally different things. But what I realized is that when I'm working with companies with Coltivar, I'm turning it around, I'm helping them grow. There's still that problem, financial literacy. So I can direct those people to boost your financial IQ. It's all online. It's easy to take. You can take these courses on the go. You have an app for it, and it's just super easy to learn. And then conversely, I'll have people that just go to boosting your financial IQ. They heard the podcast, they'll listen to it, and then they will eventually reach out to me and say, I love this stuff. Just come into my company and just do it. Just like help us, So they complement each other. And that's the beautiful piece of that.
Which A is a beautiful business model. Just like practically having them feed each other is wonderful. And the work you're doing is not like small beans. It's like it I think oftentimes when I'm working with business owners, if we can do the work to get you really clear, to get a lot of this stuff cleaned up, and we can move the valuation on your business even just a few percent. I mean,
Yeah.
oftentimes you can see some big changes in business valuation if you get these things clear and you get um, their financial engine working hard and actively working as a strategy. But people's businesses, that's their biggest asset. Like from a financial planning standpoint, it's like, okay, you are part owner of Apple because you have Apple stock.
Mhm.
You're not going to be making a lot of big moves. You're not going to be the one changing Apple's valuation pretty much at all. So we are kind of beholden to whatever they're doing. And you only get your sliver of that. So if Apple changes by 5%, great. Whatever you own in Apple changes by 5%. Now, with your own business, now this is oftentimes your biggest holding. It's where the majority of your money and your net worth lie, and you're the one that has the control over it.
Yeah.
You are able to make the changes necessary to change the valuation. So if we get really clear, like if you're working with someone, they're coming to you and saying, hey, come into my business and fix this up, or they're using Boost Your Financial IQ to do it themselves. That's real wealth changing stuff. You change someone's, you know, stock by 10%, sure. You change someone's business by 10%, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars off, like easily, you know? And so these things, it's not just helping someone get over like a confusion or an overwhelm by understanding financial statements. It's if you're building this business, A, we want to keep it healthy. And B, if you want to sell this one day, getting this stuff in order is going to get you back out of your business so much more money, so much more wealth, and so much more value for the blood, sweat, and tears you put into this all this time building it. And so it's cool because with entrepreneurs, there's a different flavor for everyone. Some people are total delegators. I don't have the time, energy, effort, skill, or desire. Steve, come do this for us, please.
Mhm.
Others are, I'm going to bootstrap. I'm the CFO of my business and I want to do it. And you've kind of, I'm sure there's been a lot of intentional strategy, but in so many ways, like also organically built these two offerings that are like, however you want to do it, let's get your financial house in order. Let's get your business up to date so that you can build ultimate wealth and see your business succeed, to not experience the same painful mistake I experienced back in the day when I had to tell my employees that our business had a great mission, vision, value. We were doing it, but the financial engine was off. And so I just think
Exactly.
that's like your story is one that, like you said, isn't linear. Most of the great stories aren't. Life
Mhm.
is rarely linear. It's like cyclical and kind of all over the place. But I appreciate that you're someone who A, has that natural drive, and B, doesn't get defeated. You're like, all right,
Mhm.
like we're moving, we're growing. There's like a resilience that's required in self employment. So for you, what has surprised you the most of this journey? I mean, you've had quite the journey all the way from high school till now. What surprised you the most about entrepreneurship and self employment?
I mean, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that surprised me, and it's not really that it surprised me. It's not like I was totally naive to this, but it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a ton of work. And that's probably why a lot of companies fail. That's why a lot of people don't want to be entrepreneurs. And that's okay. I mean, if everybody was an entrepreneur, we'd have all these like solopreneur businesses, right? You need employees and you need managers. But
Mm-hmm.
it's overestimating or underestimating certain parts of entrepreneurship. And it's a big sacrifice. It's a grind. Like I'll get up at 4 in the morning, oftentimes. Get up at 4. You know, I'm a man of faith, so I like to read my scriptures. I like to journal. I get
Mm,
my workout in. I have to get that first hour in. But then by 5 a.m., I'm at my desk grinding.
mm,
And then, I have kids. So I have kids' responsibilities, but I'll work all day. I'll get the kids from school. I'll hang out with the kids, and then I work some more. And so it's just like this grind. And then in my earlier days, there are a lot of sacrifices. So there's times where my friends, they're going out to this movie or this club or, traveling here and there. And I was working on my business. And so the rewarding part of that is this. It's like when you go through that journey and you commit to those sacrifices and you're learning and you're growing and you're just like grinding it out, you're becoming
mm,
somebody during that process. So I just bring that up, Leland, because I think there's this fake reality on social media or on YouTube or whatever it may be of these people that are like, hey, earn your first million in 3 months. Or, I just created this business with AI and I sold it for $10 million and you can too. And I think there's this false notion that you can create an app or you can create the next thing and you could be this multimillionaire in a year by working 5 hours a day in your sweats at home. And sure, maybe there's some people that can do that. But for the rest of us, entrepreneurship is a grind, but there are
mm.
like huge rewards. There's huge rewards to it.
I completely agree. As in my space, like financial planning, people come to me with like, I saw you name it on TikTok of like, if I just literally had a client reach out and say like, send me a video of like buying alpacas as a tax write off. I
Hmm.
was like, we live in suburban Virginia Beach. Like, I don't know where you're getting an alpaca from, but like, it's not this get rich quick scheme.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, like, sure, it'd be great if life came easy and we just did something and became multimillionaires. But I love what you said of like that word becoming. Um,
Hmm.
a year or so ago, one of the guests on my podcast, that was her definition of success was like to always be becoming who God made me to be. The
Yeah.
to always be becoming in this constant search of growth and change in our lives. We don't want to be static. We don't want to be the person we were 10 years ago. We shouldn't be.
Sure.
If you are, we need to keep growing. You've grown stagnant. It's like, so in that episode, we talked about like a cement truck. Like cement needs to keep moving to stay flexible. The second it stops moving, it hardens, it, it sets in stone literally, and then it's not changing anymore. And so I do think that there's lots of ways to grow, but entrepreneurship is almost like a forcing mechanism to growth. Like you just, because I am in charge of PeaceLink financial planning, I have to constantly be growing and changing. And it challenges me personally through my own head trash, through my own, do I have what it takes challenges that I have to show up every day and face fear and like you said, wake up early and make sacrifice. But that's me becoming and growing into who I'm ultimately created to be. And
Yeah.
so I just think that's like a spot on. Like it's so hard. Entrepreneurship is a lot of work and it is hard. But just like kids, people say kids are hard. Well, if kids were hard and terrible, no one would ever have kids. Kids are
Right.
hard and also like incredibly rewarding and a source, like a fountain of deep wealth and laughter and fun and joy. And so they're hard, but they're rewarding.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying with entrepreneurship. Um, what was the low point for you? I mean, based on your story, I think I could probably pick it out, but for you, in your own words, like throughout this whole journey, what was the low point?
Yeah. I mean, there's been multiple low points along the way. I mean, I already alluded to my earlier one, but it's not like it stopped there. I mean, recently, I went through a divorce a few years ago, and that was a difficult situation. Not necessarily like obviously divorce is not something I had ever aspired to or like something I
Mm,
wanted. Um, but it's just a reality of life for some of us. So that was a hard time. But the biggest part of that, the hardest thing was realizing that I had to make a massive pivot in my life. And let me explain.
mm,
For so many years, I was just go, 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 go. And I got my fulfillment from doing things and working and just, achieving, right? And COVID was probably good for a lot of us because it forced me to slow down. Before, I'm like traveling all over the country. I'm giving these keynote addresses. I'm meeting with leadership. I'm in board meetings. I'm investing in companies. I'm turning around companies. I'm writing books. Oh, by the way, I'll have some kids in the process, and might as well run a marathon in my spare time. I mean, that was my life, Leland. It's crazy. And then I slowed down and I realized, like, what the heck am I doing? Like,
Mm,
what's my purpose? What are my intentions? Like, why am I here on earth? It's like these questions we all ask ourselves at some point, and it all came crashing down.
mm,
And I like hit the lowest point in my life. And at the same time, ironically, I was going to the lowest place on earth. And I was at the lowest place on earth. I was actually like going to the Dead Sea. And it was
mm,
during that time and during that trip and being in the Dead Sea, like in the water, that it just like all connected. I'm like, literally, I'm at the lowest place on earth, and I'm at the
mm,
lowest place in my life. And I realized, like, hey, I have to turn things around. I have to be more intentional. I have to focus on what really matters. And coming back from that has helped me to become such a more empathetic person, a better leader in so many different ways. I've had to, swallow my pride and really practice humility. But that's what it comes down to, is focusing on what really matters. And I'm so grateful for those hardships and that experience, because now I'm like so much more focused. I'm so much more intentional, and it's about people. Like,
mm.
it's about helping people. It's not about a title or another zero in my bank account. It's about truly helping people and blessing the lives of people with the talents that I've been given. And it's radically changed my perspective, and it's allowed me to get so much more fulfillment out of life.
Gosh, I wish I could like just bottle that last quote and like play it to myself. That is like really, really powerful real life stuff. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, this is a podcast about success, but that word success means different things to different people. So, for you, how would you define success? And how will you know if or when you've achieved it?
Yeah. I think success for me, like when it comes down to it, like I've been successful financially. I've made some big financial mistakes along the way too. I've been successful in business. I've made business mistakes. So I've seen both sides of it, success and failure, from all different perspectives, even relationships. I've been successful with relationships. I've failed at relationships. I think for me, like, success is, fulfilling, like finding the purpose of why you're here on earth, and then like fulfilling that. I mean, and
Mm,
that's going to vary for everybody. So for me, being at Coltivar, like my purpose at Coltivar, my purpose at boosting your financial IQ is to elevate people's lives through better business.
mm,
And that's not just some cheesy slogan, but the way I look at it is like this, Leland. Some people are really good at baking, for example. They can bake some like artisan bread, or they can, whip up some cuisine, and it, brings joy to people, right? Like, you deliver a birthday cake, or you make a fancy dinner for somebody to celebrate their anniversary or graduation or whatever it may be. Or you're a doctor and you can bless the lives of people by saving lives, right? For me, that's business. I'm a nerd with business. I love business like people love football. Like, it's like my hobby. You'll find me on a beach in the Caribbean with a highlighter, highlighting something about credit default swaps or free cash flow or whatever it may be, because I just love the stuff. And success is using that and then helping people to live better lives. Let me just give you one quick example and then I'll be done. I was working with this couple once. I went into their business and their business was failing. They were running out of cash. They were on the brink of failure. They were fighting like nonstop, like cats and dogs. Seriously, it's like oil and water. She would say something, he would like say something contrary to it. And they were just like
mm,
bickering, and it's just like terrible. Even the lights were like dim in the conference room. It's just like this negative, like, feeling. And I
mm,
left there feeling like terrible. I'm like, I don't even know if I want to get involved with this client. And so I went away, I looked at their finances, and very quickly, I could understand the story behind the numbers now. And I saw the story, I saw the opportunities for improvement. They were making some mistakes with pricing and other things with their structure. I went in there and said, look, this is where you're at now. This is where you can be. And here's the plan to work it. Here's the strategy. So we did that. And within 6 months, cash flow started to improve. Within a year, the business was radically different. They bought more trucks. They hired more employees. They were bulging in their office. They had to expand and lease the space next to them. And I would go there and it was like, hey, sweetie, how's it going? Like a little tap on the butt, like it was like radically different. I'm like, who is this couple? Before I thought you guys were going to like kill each other, or get a divorce.
Mm,
And that's when it really like hit me and it like really touched my heart. And that's success for me. And it looks different for everybody else, but the essence of it is transformation.
mm,
And when I can go into somebody's lives and when I can walk into their story, when I can meet them where they're at and I can help them transform that story, and then all of a sudden there's somebody completely different and they're becoming themselves, that's success to me. It's not, money's just money.
mm.
So to me, like, okay, give me another, zero in my bank account. Like I said, that doesn't bring me like a lot of satisfaction. But to me, it's blessing the lives of other people with the God-given talents and abilities that I've been given.
That's awesome. So, Steve, where can listeners find you if they
Yeah.
want to
So
get
if
into
you
it?
want to connect with me, probably the easiest place is going to boosting your financial IQ. So it's byfiq.com, byfiq.com. I mean, you could also look me up on LinkedIn or you can look me up on Instagram and whatever it may be, and you can connect with me there. But I'm, just Google me, search me out, and I'd love to connect.
That's awesome. And we'll link all of that in the show notes as well. Steve, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your story from a place of vulnerability and honesty. I've loved this episode. So thanks for being here today.
Yeah, great job, Leland. I really appreciate it.